So we're here today with the family of Nicholas Thomas, and so basically we just want to we can start with you guys, introducing yourselves, letting us know who you are and why you're here today.
Well, my name is Huey Thomas. I'm Nicholas's father, and we're here to discuss his life and what happened in Smyrna, Georgia on March 24th.
I'm Felicia Thomas. I'm Nicholas Thomas's mother, and we're here because we have to be here.
And I'm attorney Mawuli Davis from the Davis Bozeman Law Firm, and we have been retained by the family to represent Nicholas's interests, his child, London, who is 5 months, and his estate. The fact that he lost his life at the hands of a Smyrna police officer is what this is about. It's about justice for Nick, both through the criminal prosecution of the officer, Sergeant Kenneth Owens, as well as the civil litigation against the city of Smyrna for creating a set of circumstances which led to Nick's death at the age of 23 years old.
Okay, so if you could start with take us back to that day. What happened?
First of all, I just finished working. I work from home. I'm a business owner, so I work from home, and I turned the TV on about 4 o'clock because I wanted to watch the news. So when I turned the TV on at 4 o'clock, I saw Nicholas's job on the TV, the Goodyear, and my husband was just coming home from work, and I heard there was a shooting. So right then my heart just sank, and I just told my husband, I said, look, I gotta go up there. He says, no, call. And I said, no, it's Nicholas, something's wrong. So I went up there, and when I went up there, no one would tell me anything, and the police officers wouldn't give me information, so I went past the barricades, and I finally got up to the front of the office, and one of his co-workers just basically told me, it was Nicholas, and his body wasn't on the scene, but the car that his boss told him to work on, to service, had bullet holes, like they had executed him, and his body was gone, and I just saw this car, and I just fell down in the street, and people just came out of their cars and were just hugging me and just told me, everything's gonna be all right, I'm sorry to hear about your son, and it was just hard. It was heartbreaking, it was heartbreaking, just to see that, it was my baby, he wasn't a perfect kid. Everybody has a record, if you look at everybody's record, even the police officer had a record. He had a 911 call from his wife, domestic violence. He used to beat on his wife. They're not even showing that, and he used to be an ex-police officer for, what was it, Cobb County.
Correct.
And they put him on 2 years probation for domestic violence. And then Smyrna hired him as a police officer. He should have never really been a police officer again.
Okay, so are we allowed to discuss like some of the stuff the witnesses have said?
Absolutely. The issue, I think that's important, is that the way so often officers are able to tell their story, their scenario, their narrative is that I felt threatened because he was driving at me. Well, if you look closely at the facts and the evidence, there are a couple of problems with that. Number one is the shots were never fired into the front.
And that's a very good point. Very good point. All of the bullets were on the right side of the car.
So if the allegation is, I'm shooting at you because you're coming at me with a car, then you would expect those bullets to come through
the front
windshield. That's not what any evidence, all the evidence is that, as Mr. Thomas said, that it all is shot along the car, on the side of the car.
As if he was trying to get away?
Absolutely. And we acknowledge that he, like so many other young men, are almost have in them this idea, if the police come, I'm trying to get away. It's not something that is safe, but it is definitely not something that should result in anyone's execution. It should not result in anyone's murder. It should not result in a death penalty because he's panicked and trying to get away. Mm-hmm. And so we know, based on witnesses, that he was driving the car back and forward, but that he never made any maneuvers to try to strike any officer. And the witnesses also say that the car is at a standstill when the shots are fired. And so, and that the officer who fired the shot is behind a vehicle in a safe location when he fires the shots. And so there is no imminent bodily danger or harm that he's having to shoot at Nicholas and kill him in the manner that he did. And so that's what is so troubling, is that we see these kinds of cases over and over again, and then the attempt to justify it is, oh, an officer was afraid for his life, when this officer was not in a position to be injured, and that he fires again in the side of the window, fatally killing.
And Nicholas was unarmed.
Nicholas was unarmed. He was
at work.
He was at work. That's the other thing that's so, I mean, he was, and they can, mom and dad can tell you about the kind of young man that he was in terms of his desire to work. But he was working. He was at his job. He gets a ticket. He's told to pull this car around. It's a Maserati. Pull the car around for service.
So he was in the car for a reason anyways.
And they make it appear as though he jumped in the car when he saw the police. No, he walked out casually. All of the witnesses. He waves, speaks, gets in the car. When he gets in the car, he pulls around. Then the officers show up moments after he is in the car and pulling around. At some point, it appears, based on the conversations and the interviews that we've conducted, is that he does see the police and he tries to make a run for it, but never trying to strike or hit any of these officers. They come with a SWAT team. They come with the K-9 unit. They come with all of these officers. They block him off. So there's no way for him to leave. All they have to do is just, he would have eventually just said, okay.
Yeah.
But they've got a dog running around. Who jumps out of a car with a big K-9 running around the car, a German Shepherd running around the car? It makes no sense. They're saying, you know, we're gonna chase you, go. You know, in terms of their whole approach, which is just is troubling for them to have that number of officers come, and all they really had to do was send somebody undercover and say, hey, you know, I'm looking for Nick so he can talk to me about my car.
Because it was a warrant, right? Or
A
something.
probation violation warrant.
Yeah, and that's a good point. We've not heard anything about the warrant.
Still?
Yes, they have not told the truth that Nicholas was unarmed. That hasn't come out, which I'm really extremely concerned with. Another thing that we all have concerns with, and I think my attorneys as well, is that Smyrna was in an Atlanta address to serve a warrant for Clayton County. Those are 3 different jurisdictions. Also, we had Cobb County, which is kind of quasi Smyrna, but you know, Cobb has a jurisdiction in Cobb County, Smyrna in Smyrna. So I'm really confused as to, and I need some answers as to why Smyrna Police, and these are street cops. These were not detectives. These were not sheriffs. They were basic street cops who really, I don't see how they had a jurisdiction to serve a warrant for a county that's 15, 20 miles south, at least, of where they served a warrant for another county.
Wow.
It doesn't make any sense.
Any at all.
None. And when I got to the scene, as our attorney Davis just said, all the gunshots on the right side of the car. In the passenger side left, right, and the passenger rear right. I noticed that all the windows on the left-hand side were blown out. Those were from bean bags, they say. In talking to the medical examiner, or somebody representing themselves as such for Cobb County, our kid was shot under the armpit, the right armpit. So this says to me that his hands were up in the car. You don't get shot under the armpit and your hands are down. His hands had to be up in the air to be shot under the armpit.
I'm sorry. Are y'all expecting somebody else?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I think that was for me.
Well, the saddest
Can I-
part is Nicholas has a 5-month baby, and he can't see her grow up. He can't be at her wedding, see her graduate from high school, you know. And he was a lovable guy. You know, everybody in Atlanta knows him. Just about everywhere he would go. Hey, Nick. Hey. You know, every time we would go out somewhere, everybody in the city knew Nicholas. You know, and he always had a smile. You know, and he loved cars. He loved taking things apart, putting them back together, you know.
Even though they may not have been put back together correctly. He loved doing that.
Yeah, you know, he always wanted to own his own automobile shop one day. You know, he had dreams. Now his dreams are gone, you know. Like I said, piece of my heart is gone because that was our child. You know, he was only 23 years old. 23, you know.
And it's totally senseless. Just totally senseless for the folks to train down on him like that at his job. And, you know, I'll have to be honest. If 20 or 30 police officers was coming after me, I'd have to make some arrangements myself. I mean, I just totally wouldn't know which way to go. It doesn't make sense for the SWAT team to have been there and for them to train down on Nicholas like they did and take his life.
Then it was premeditated, I think, because they had an ambulance on site even before they shot and killed him. On site.
Wow, that's interesting.
And then afterwards, you want to hear something that's crazy? They went over to Chick-fil-A and got Chick-fil-A biscuits and were eating on the scene.
The officers?
Yes. Yes.
It's really the scenario of what happened to Nick Thomas is another example of why there is a movement across this country about Black Lives Mattering, about these young African American men that are unarmed, being shot by police. And you know, if you're so afraid of the black man, of a young black person, then you shouldn't be patrolling the streets. If you're so afraid that an unarmed black man can cause you such harm, such damage, and you fear for your life every time you see one, that just creates a very dangerous scenario for our young men. And I say this as I sit with these parents. I have a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old. You have to be concerned at all times because of the way our young people are really being projected, how they're being viewed, and then ultimately how they've been shot and killed when they are unarmed. And if it was a reasonable person, you can't think they're a threat just because they're young and African American, or because they're an African American man. But that is what the pattern is. That's what we're seeing happen. That's what all of the reports across the country is showing, is that this is a pattern, and that it is unfortunate that Nick's death has to happen, but it's our hope and this family's, you know, absolute mission is to make sure that there's some laws that are changed, that there's different protocol put in place, that there are body cameras, that there are a number of systemic changes that are made so that no other family has to go through what they're going through. This is...
So how
And I
do,
would
I'm
say
sorry.
Another thing, that Nicholas didn't die in vain. I think he died for change. And I tell America, basically, they need to step up. They have to step up, because if it happened to my family, it can happen to anyone. You know? It can happen to anyone.
That is so very true. So how do you all feel now towards the justice system and police? Do you still have that same belief or faith that you did before?
You know?
Well, as far as police, I don't. I just don't have any faith in them whatsoever, because I keep hearing the same thing over and over and over. Our attorneys just got another case, I believe, in the last 24 hours of another young man in Atlanta being mowed down and cut down by 7-8 bullets in his back. I never feared the police, and I don't fear anything or anyone, but I don't have any, I've lost respect for police. I did have respect for them, but all of this stuff about them policing themselves with the coyness of the Cobb County DA getting on TV saying that we don't, and he was really, really disrespectful. We don't, it's not our intention, because parents are grieving to have GBI involved. and it's not our intention to make everybody happy when it comes to advocates. So in essence, if we can please everybody and make them happy, we'll go ahead and get the GBI involved. That's disrespectful. So I've lost respect for him and his office as well. I think, as Attorney Davis just said, we've absolutely got to have lawmakers to step in, to have body cameras, because obviously their cars are sometimes equipped. They can finagle the camera, they can cut it on and off at leisure, which makes no sense. And there's a creation of this gang mentality within the police, militarization. We're the police and you don't question us. We are going to do what we want to do, and we don't care about society, especially when it comes to black men. And that's a good question, but I've lost faith in the police. Now, the judicial system, that remains to be seen. I'm totally not really happy with just the GBI involved in this. I would like to see the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, involved in this, because I know that they're going to be a little more objective versus subjective, and I have some concerns. But we are glad to have that step, and we do believe that at a minimum, the GBI should be involved in any type of officer-involved shooting, especially if it involves a fatality, especially.
And if anyone wants to, keep in touch with us and the family, and, we just want you guys to continue praying for us. And we have a hashtag, Justice for Nicholas. We also have a Gmail account, which is justicefornicholasnow@gmail.com.
Justicefornicknow@gmail.com. And so I would add another thing is that getting information out, the black media such as Sister to Sister, WAOK, WV 103, in a host of other publications, the Atlanta Voice, having this information out in the public, I think, is essential, because we don't want this to just die down. We want to keep pounding the pavement. And if we have to keep getting articles out every 3 weeks, every couple of weeks, then we like to do that. What is going on with the Nicholas Thomas case? What is going on with this case? What's going on? Because there's so many. And this needs to be a national issue. It is a national issue. It's happening all around the United States of America. If I didn't think, and if I come to this country just visiting, I would think that this is not a civilized nation. It's like Iraq or Afghanistan somewhere. We've got cops that are doing injustices, and we need to get this information out. So I think black media, we need to stay together. We're prepared to share our story at any time, and we just need to continue doing so. So we thank Sister to Sister,
Yes, we do. We thank you.
and many other publications and radio stations, and the black community as a whole.
He was a funny guy. He loved to tell jokes. He'd call us every day. 10 times a day. Hey, Mommy, what you doing? Hey, Dad, what you doing? He'd call his brother 100 times a day. He always had a smile on his face. He was so nice. He loved his daughter. He loved his father. Oh my God, he just looked up to this man. He just loved his father. He wanted to be just like his father. He says, Mom, I'm trying to buy a house for my daughter and my girlfriend. I just want to be successful. I want to retire at an early age. He was a fun kid. He was a jokester all the time. He would come and he was my handyman. I'm gonna miss him. He was my handyman. Every time I need a light bulb, my mom do that. He used to come take the trash out for me. And he loved playing with his cars when he was little. When he was 2 years old, he had one of those little 99-cent cars in his mouth. He'd run up and down the hall with it. He always loved cars. And even in his room now, he has about 100 cars underneath his bed. So he was a loving kid. He's going to be missed.
He didn't have any enemies, I'll tell you that much. And every time he went somewhere, somebody knew him. So I have to tell Kenneth Owens, and I hope to see him one day, with handcuffs in his hands behind his back, going to federal prison. You've heard a lot of folks. And it's my desire that he gets put in jail. And if not, then he'll get his due at some point in time. But Nicholas was a great kid. He loved living. He really did.
Now, if moving forward, if unfortunately it doesn't work out in your favor, how do you feel like that will affect your family?
Well, you know, we'll deal with it when it comes up, and we'll continue to do what we need to do to make sure that, as you stated before, his name is not continuously slandered as the first thing that they did, which had nothing to do with March 24th. They went back in 2013. They went back in another year or two about other issues that had absolutely nothing to do with this officer choosing, one out of the plethora of officers there, choosing to take our son's life. He was at work, which he loved doing. And obviously his boss got on TV and said Nick was great. He came to work early and he stayed late. How many 23-year-old men, especially black men, do that? How many? And so this kid knew what he wanted to do. He loved what he did, and he got gunned down doing what he loved to do. So I think that he actually is a hero for a lot of folks because he took care of his kid. He loved his kid. He loved us, his parents who loved his brother, and he loved his family. So you know, we'll just have to deal with it when it comes up. If he walks, but it's still my contention that we need to make some changes, and if we can get some body cameras, if we can make sure these cops can't take video and adjust it, edit it, including in cop cars, then that would be enough, including having some act to prevent this. And I'm proposing the Nicholas Taft Thomas Act around the entire United States. But we need to start small, and we need to start in the state of Georgia. But that's what I'm proposing, to force any officer that has discharged their weapon and against a citizen. It doesn't really matter about black or white, because now we're dealing with black issues and how black kids are getting killed. If it continues in the black community, then obviously it's going to spill over into other communities, and this is what folks need to understand. This is a civil issue. It's a criminal issue at the same time. And police need to stop policing themselves.
And to answer to your question, how is my family going to survive? God got this. God has his case.
Absolutely.
You know, and we're going to stay in prayer. You know, that's the only thing we can do. That's the only thing we have left.
So why do you feel like this issue is important to black women?
The issue of the attack on, and what it feels like, this pattern of shooting black males is an attack overall on the black community, but in particular against black women as well, because we know we can't have families and we can't have a continuation of our of our entire community without having a family, without a man, without a woman, and without us putting it all together. Nick had a beautiful daughter. This is about every sister who reads Sister to Sister should see this little beautiful child and think of themselves and think of their potential to bring life onto this planet and into this world. And when you do that, you can't help but want to support this family. You can't help but want to support London. This is a beautiful little girl. And it's what Sister to Sister is all about. It's about the beauty of black women. And she is the epitome of it at this young age. It's about his mother, who's a beautiful black woman who has next to her a loving husband who, the way they will make it is together. That's how they will make it. That's what I've observed. We've done so many of these cases. We've done so many. It hurts to keep doing them. But we've done so many of them, though. The families that make it are because they are strong together. They are strong in their faith. And that's the only thing that will allow them to survive. I just say that what Sister to Sister is doing, what black media does, is allow us to tell our own story. So often other folks try to tell our story. That's what they've been trying to do in this case and in most of the cases that we handle, is that there is an official police account, their narrative. But we have the right, we have the responsibility, we have the duty to tell Nick Thomas's story, to tell the story of all of these young brothers who are being shot, who are being chased, who are being profiled, who are being targeted, and all of that impacts the black woman, because they're coming not just for an individual, but we see a pattern, and so it impacts us as a community. So we thank Sister to Sister for being a national magazine willing to allow this family to tell this particular part of an overarching story of why black lives must be respected, why young black men lives matter, why sisters and brothers, why it matters.
Have you all gotten any support from like some of the black leaders in our country?
We have, Reverend Al Sharpton did have them on the radio speaking to them. We're reaching out across the country. The outpouring of local activists has just been tremendous. We know that organizing for systemic change has to be on a local level. We want national attention because this is a national epidemic. This is a national problem. But we know that in order, we've got to be on the ground. As Mr. Thomas said, boots on the ground in every place that we live, breathe, work. We've got to have organizers there. So we don't ever want people to think, well, that's something that's happening in D.C. That's happening right here. It's happening in Smyrna, in Atlanta, in Chicago, in
Missouri,
Charleston,
Texas,
Oklahoma. It's happening everywhere.
California, I mean everywhere.
And we've got to be organized everywhere. We shouldn't go into a community and people are like, well, who's organizing around the issue of racial profiling and police brutality? And people shrug their shoulders. I don't know. All of us have to. None of us are exempt from this work because this is about life, and it's about the preservation of life, community, and family. And that's what this is really the crux of.
Mm-hmm.